What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more solo Morten Harket, and we're going back to his 1995 album Wild Seed. We're going to listen to a tune called Brodsky Tune. Now, this is a track that a number of you suggested it would not be a terrible thing to become acquainted with before I do the reaction, so I have done that. And I think a number of you even mentioned specifically, sort of a general idea what it's about. So my understanding is that this is a tune that deals with the Bosnian War, which was one facet or theater of the larger series of conflicts, related but independent in some ways, called the Yugoslav Wars. I think internationally the one perhaps that became most well known among media organizations, which, that might relate to what the song is going to talk about, the idea that these wars were, despite how brutal, devastating, and destructive of many lives, including lives that, were not a party in any violent sense to these conflicts, that many people around the world were either indifferent or perhaps even entirely ignorant that they were happening. But yeah, the Kosovo War, I think, is perhaps the most internationally well-known, one that, sort of generated the greatest military response from some other governments and so on. But the bottom line is that these conflicts, the Yugoslav Wars, were characterized by Yugoslavia, this large sort of multi-ethnic, large, geographically large state, was sort of losing power and influence, and it became a sort of rump state where sections were no longer under its control, and that led a number of ethno-religious communities to try to carve out a sort of space for themselves. But ultimately Bosnia, which was supposed to be sort of for Bosniaks, parts of it were sort of declared to be like a Serbian state, and there was another part of it that was declared to be a Croatian state, and that would have ultimately partitioned Bosnia for Bosniaks into a much smaller area. And bottom line, I think there were sort of atrocities on all sides. Definitely there was loss and death on all sides. And so I didn't look at the lyrics. I just sort of, looked online as to what sort of Brodsky Tune was about. And what I found is that there's a poet named, I think, Joseph Brodsky, who wrote Bosnia Tune, which is a poem. And so I think this is an homage to, or perhaps, approaching the same subject matter as Bosnia Tune, the poem. And so I think it's a sort of tribute by Morten to the poet to call it Brodsky Tune. But yeah, I didn't look at the lyrics, so my expectation is that perhaps we're going to deal with the way in which a world which cares, or a species which cares to be, or which purports to be against wanton violence and the destruction of innocent lives, including, children and so on, that so many people seem to turn a blind eye to that kind of suffering and that level of devastation and destruction, because it was far away, or because it wasn't convenient to think about, or because, they must be different over there, so I'm not going to have sympathy with them. So we might get some of that. We might get, again, a sort of a contrasting of how certain conflicts were treated in one respect, and then the way that, again, a lot of people may not have even heard about these conflicts because international press agencies just weren't as interested in disseminating, the horrors that were happening there, and so on. So I guess we'll find out. Let's get it. This is Morten Harket. The tune is Brodsky Tune, and it's from his 1995 album Wild Seed.
As you pour yourself a scotch, cross your road to check your watch, as your hand adjusts your tie. And towns with funny names hit by bullets caught in flames, by and large not knowing why.
The victims of war are often not the perpetrators of
you
it.
don't love, yet big for having no chance to scream or say goodbye.
Oh, that that vocal delivery. So was the line like, while you're drinking scotch, or while you're checking your watch, while you're straightening your tie, these brutalities and this suffering is happening for anyone who cares to pay attention?
People died as you left, new muscles of neglect, self-restraint, whereby people
Listen to his
died.
delivery here, like,
Too far off to practice love, for my neighbor would rather slap where your cherubs tried to fly.
there's some tension-filled, dissonant sounds we've heard, and it's like, yeah, make me uncomfortable, make me have to face this.
History, forest field tends to buy those who die. As you watch the Atlas score, or check your latest statement, or sing your child lullaby. Time, sharp blood, flash the quill, watch the kill, for those who kill. Pronounce the last right. Pronounce the last right. As you're tired.
Between his like passionate vocal delivery and the heft, the weight of the tune sonically. Wow. Yeah, that was a remarkable tune. I felt the weight of it both conceptually and sonically, fair to say. And again, I didn't catch all the lines, but what I did catch did sound like it was, about, look at this destruction, the sort of the angels of neglect. I think that was a line. Maybe, again, that's about, maybe people do see these stories. Maybe they, read about them at the, while they're sipping their coffee or their scotch. Or while they're looking up at a TV like news scroll while they're at a bar in a comfortable place where bombs are not falling, and people are not losing family members who again are not even a party to these violent conflicts in any meaningful sense. They're only the victims of it. So yeah, I felt like maybe that line was speaking to that, and just the way he wailed in those sort of like really expressive vocal delivery sections. I felt like that was lamentative. That was a sort of a regret of the humanity that is lost. Again, not just in that one conflict, but in conflicts where if we really meant what we say as humans about being opposed to the wanton destruction of lives and societies for little more than ambition, greed, or sort of vengeful spite, then we really should care, and we really should, sort of not allow these things to get to that state in the first place. And we certainly shouldn't, turn a blind eye to that level of destruction, cruelty, pain, suffering, and loss. So those are the themes that are going through my head as I heard that. But again, it was a sonically compelling tune. So it's one of those things where like I'm enjoying him singing, but what he's singing about is sort of like, tempering my like visceral enthusiasm a little bit. But hey, look, I listen to punk rock, and as people in the punk rock world, like Jello Biafra, the dead Kennedys, often said, well, like, often drawing attention to a problem that's happening is the first step in ameliorating it or even solving it. So, bringing attention to painful and bad things is not like a negative outlet for a creative enterprise. It can actually be a very positive thing if it makes people care and take an interest in doing something about it. So anyway, let me know what you think of this one. Shout out to all of you who gave me the impetus to make sure that I had a sense of what's going on here. I do think my appreciation in the moment was enhanced. I will say that's probably going to be the case for like any tune. On one level, I do like engaging with the lyrics here, or not just here, but as in their original sonic context as much as possible. But again, I suppose I did that here. Like, I had a sense of what it was about just from seeing a couple comments online, as well as in the comments, in previous Morten reactions. But I didn't actually look at the lyrics. So bottom line, I'm going to try to keep doing things the way I do. But I know a number of you mentioned that the East Timor tune, that one is, a conflict that even more so. I knew a bit about the Yugoslav wars. Again, I'm a historian. It's like you have to learn about different regions when you get your degrees. But I do know a bit more about the East Timor conflict. So that one, I should be able to talk about without even needing to kind of poke around online a little bit. But either way, this was a really great tune, and I understand why it would be so powerful. So shout out to Joseph Brodsky, shout out to Morten Harket, shout out to all the Morten Harket and AHA fans. I really do appreciate you. Let me know what you think of this one. I'll see you next time. Peace.